My prime example from here until the end of time of a company that can't get out of its own way will forever be Google. After 2 weeks ago coming out and telling us, well, the company itself didn't tell us. So this is going to be something that I'm going to get to in a moment because Google is not alone in doing this. Samsung is kind of the master at doing this, and perhaps Google's picked up a little bit on these tactics. But a Google developer came out during an interview and said that they were going to focus on higher-end devices for Gemini Nano, which means the Pixel 8 was going to be left in the dust as far as the higher-end AI stuff was concerned. Now, a ton of backlash over the last 2 weeks. You heard plenty of it here. You heard plenty of it all over Twitter and the internet and YouTube, and now Google has walked that back. It said the developer preview and the next feature drop in the summertime is going to have Gemini Nano coming to the Pixel 8, so they're going to try it out. So what happened here? Let's talk about it, because there's a couple things that I think happened or you could choose from, and neither one of them makes Google look very good. So the first one is this. Samsung does this a lot. They did it with the AI stuff not coming to the S22, and they kind of went back and forth on that. They'll kind of send out a trial balloon. So the Google developer interview was a trial balloon. Let's send this out and see what sticks to the wall. Let's see how heavy the backlash is and what exactly we can get away with. So they sent this developer out to say, look, we're not going to put Gemini Nano on the Pixel 8. We're going to focus on higher-end devices, and let's see where the chips fall. And, well, they got a lot of pushback, probably more pushback than they expected. I saw it in the comments section. A lot of people jumping up and down saying they'd never buy another Pixel device ever again after this. And that's understandable. You can't spend the entire fall pumping everybody up about the AI capabilities of Tensor 3, how these phones are the future, how you basically got everybody to ignore benchmarks and the fact that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 would just eat your lunch. You got everybody to ignore that because you said we focused on the AI modules and whatever else we put into Tensor 3. Well, you can't turn around and then say a phone that just came out with a Tensor 3 can't run the Gemini Nano stuff. I don't care anything about RAM. We're going to talk about RAM in a moment, and maybe there's a legitimate case to be made there, but either way, it doesn't look good for Google. Okay, so now, they did that, and they got the backlash. So they said, okay, let's walk it back, and let's give Gemini Nano to the Pixel 8 users. That still puts the Pixel Fold users in limbo. It still puts the 7a, forget it, I wouldn't even bother with that, but it still puts the Pixel 8a, and I think there was a forward-looking eye towards the Pixel 8a when they made this decision, this U-turn. It wasn't just the Pixel 8 users, because you've already purchased your phone. That's kind of a sunk cost. They don't really care about that. But they've got a Pixel 8a coming out that they'd like to sell, so they needed something there to walk back and get Gemini Nano on that device, because you can't load up a Tensor 3 on there with 8 gigs of RAM and get it without explaining why you didn't give it to the Pixel 8. So here are the two things that I think went on, and again, neither one of them are good for Google. So first one, let's say it's a legitimate problem. Let's say that the 12 gigabytes of RAM is absolutely necessary in order to run Gemini Nano the way they want it to be run. Fine. No problem with that. You come out and say that, right? You come out and say that, and look, here's the limitation. Make it a legitimate thing. Say if you want it, blah, 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 here's why you'd buy a Pixel 8 Pro, and here's why you'd buy a Pixel 8, and all the rest of it, and they could do it that way. So that's fine. My problem with that is this. If you design Gemini Nano, which is supposed to be run on the lowest-end device, not lowest-end devices, but it's supposed to be the smallest version of your AI computational model, and you can't get it to run on 8 gigs of RAM, where a Samsung can, even with a more powerful processor, but without the AI modules, right, that Tensor 3 has. I know Qualcomm put some stuff in there, but it's not quite the same. If you can't get that, then that's a design problem. That's on Google. And here's my problem with that. You're telling me that it took 2 weeks, only 2 weeks, to essentially correct that problem. Even if you're saying the performance isn't as good, even if you're saying whatever else, you were able to come up with a solution to get Gemini Nano on a Pixel 8 in 2 weeks, but you weren't put that in that effort before. See, if you sent out that trial balloon and nobody made a fuss about it, they weren't going to put the effort into getting Gemini Nano on a Pixel 8. They weren't going to bother. But it took them all 2 weeks, this hardware limitation that everybody talked about jump up and down. Well, they overcame the RAM thing in 2 weeks, so why couldn't it have been done originally, is my question. Let's take it a step further. Why couldn't you just be upfront about it? Let's say it's a performance thing. It's not going to run as well on the Pixel 8. Well, that's a selling point for the Pixel 8 Pro, isn't it? That's that differentiation that you wanted in the first place. Okay, you want it to run better? We need the extra RAM. This is why you spend the extra $300. It's not the camera anymore. It's not the 120 hertz. It's not the bigger display. If you want the AI stuff in Gemini Nano running better on your device, spend the extra money and get yourself a Pixel 8 Pro. Why would that be so hard? But here's the second one that I still think is the one, and it's the one that drives everything, and that's money for these companies. I still think it was a marketing thing. I don't think it was as big of a hardware limitation. Obviously not, right? How could it have been that big of a hardware thing if they were able to overcome it in under 2 weeks? How big of an issue could it have been? These things take months to come out, re-engineer or whatever it has to do, or come up with a more aggressive, like Tech Odyssey said, a more aggressive RAM management program that kind of downs background stuff in order to give the extra RAM to the computational stuff needed for AI. Right? That takes it. Google moves at a glacial pace. So you're telling me it took them 2 weeks? Not buying it. I think they saw the backlash. Consumer confidence in Google phones is not exactly at an all-time high after the past couple of years. Consumer loyalty, every time you see that chart come out, Google's always at the bottom of that, whether you love your Pixel phone or not. You know, this comes from a place of Google. I compare Google to an addict. And I don't mean to make light of this because addiction is a very serious thing. But it's like, you know, someone who you love and you see a lot of promise in, and you would love to just get them clean and get them back on track. And then every once in a while, like with the Pixel 8 Pro, you're like, you know, they're really putting their life together and they're doing the right thing, and then they fall off the wagon. That's essentially what it is for Google over and over and over again. And it comes from a place of wanting these devices to be successful. I like Google Pixel products. I always have. But they are an annoying company to be a fan of. You know, and everybody does it, and everybody has a business model. And Apple has their frustrations, and Samsung has their frustrations, and all the rest of it. But Google is the one that treats us the worst. So not only do they do these things, but they treat us like idiots in the meantime. Hardware limitation that they didn't even specify. And then everybody comes up with RAM, and then magically it's fixed. Oh, was it? Or was it just marketing to try to get you to sell more Pixel 8 Pros? But then you realize, oh, wait a minute, we got a Pixel 8 that's only going to have 8A that's only going to have 8 gigs of RAM. We probably need to sell that with some. Well, how are we going to say that the Tensor 3 is an AI leader with AI modules and whatever, and not even offered on a brand new phone? Someone in marketing raised their hand finally, like, excuse me, this might look pretty bad. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you anymore. Good news is there was enough pushback. Everybody complained. This is why you do these videos. Everyone. You know, there were a lot of comments that said, well, why do you care? You know, why? I don't even use AI on my stuff. It's not doing very much right now. It's not that big of a deal. Or, whatever. I bought the Pixel. This is why you make noise. This is why you push back on these things. This is why you don't just take nonsense when you hear it. If something doesn't pass the smell test, you pound the table as hard as you can until it gets fixed. Because you're spending a lot of money on these phones, regardless of what model or what range you're in, you're spending hard-earned money on them. And you should absolutely get everything that you're entitled to. And that one from Google didn't pass the smell test, and that's why they backtracked on it. Because it was dumb from the start. They made their Google partners that they sent out to defend the thing on Twitter look stupid, and then they backtracked it less than 2 weeks later anyway. Well, does this restore your confidence in Google? Look, good news is Pixel 8 users are going to get Gemini Nano. If it runs a little slower, so what? They should have given us that option. They should have been upfront about it. Or they should have designed Gemini Nano a little bit better in the first place, because 8 gigs of RAM isn't exactly something to sneeze at on a smartphone. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have the Steve-licious day.